Well, hello there. My name is Mark Miles, and I love helping trainers, presenters, workshop facilitators really take their results to the next level. And in today's video, I want to talk to you about the importance and the significance of setting ground rules and ultimately how you can do it in a way that really empowers the learning environment and really gets everybody on board, so to speak, and really hungry and excited to learn. Now, what we need to realize though is that if we want to create behavioral expectations and behavioral standards, we kind of need to let our audience know and our participants know what are the expectations. Because if we don't, then it can kind of be a little bit rude, it can kind of be a little bit off putting when suddenly we say to a learner, participant, audience member, hey, not appropriate. What we need to do is we need to set those expectations up front. Because if we don't, then any behavior that we get in front of us is really just a result of the expectations we have or we haven't set. So, in order to get really good quality behavior and create a world class learning environment, we need to make sure that we set our expectations and get very clear on those. So, in today's video, as I said, I want to cover how we can really set ground rules in a way that really empowers our audience. All right. And there's a couple of things we definitely shouldn't do. There's a couple of things that we want to definitely create. And what I highly recommend is that you set these ground rules just after you set the goals or the intention for your workshop. So, for example, hey guys, today we're going to cover XYZ, XYZ, and our major goal for today's workshop is blah, whatever it is, right? To be able to develop the skills, blah, blah, whatever it might be. But you want to set the ground rules straight after the goals and the objectives, right? And what you can then say is something to the effect of, in order to achieve that, let's set some ground rules or let's set some rules of engagement for some learning parameters or however you want to describe it, right? Some people say rules of engagement, other people say rules for learning or learning, I guess boundaries, whatever you would like to call it, whatever languaging works for you. Okay. Now, I like the term rules of engagement, all right? Or you could say learning parameters, whatever works for you. All right. So now get ready, grab a pen, and get ready to write down some core fundamentals around setting ground rules. So, number one, you never want to forget to set them. Never forget to set them because if you don't and you get some bad behavior, well, you'd have to say that that's your fault. All right. You forgot to set them and suddenly something's happening. Well, yeah, that's on you. All right. So you want to definitely make sure that you've got your stock standard rules of engagement or your ground rules, and you've got them and you take them to every single workshop that you run and you've got them ready to go. Okay. Now, they may change depending on the audiences that you're working with, but I myself got my stock standard 11, 12 rules of engagement, and I've got some extra ones for delivering online and online delivery as well. All right. But I've got my stock standard 11, 12, right? Next one. When you are setting them, you always want to use the magic word because. Because, all right. Highly recommend that you grab a pen and write that one word down because that is the game changer. Because. So, for example, if you say, let's go, come back from breaks on time. You must come back from breaks on time. Nobody likes to be told what to do unless there is a reason for it. And if that reason is going to benefit the audience, they're going to be much more likely to actually follow that guideline, so to speak. So, for example, if you want to say phones on quiet, because as we all know, when we're going through a presentation or a learning environment and phones go off, it can be quite distracting. So, are we all okay if we pop our phones on quiet? Is that cool with everyone? Awesome. All right. So, that's a very simple way of just popping a reason after your ground rule. Another one, come back from breaks on time because we've got a lot to get through and I want to minimize the amount of stuff, so to speak, or things that you need to do post training or post workshop. All right. So you always want to include a reason after you state the ground rule. Really, really important that you get in the habit of because blah, 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 blah. Okay. Next one. I do recommend that you keep adding to your ground rules. What I mean by that is, for example, if you ever run a session and you notice in a particular venue that there's something to be aware of for the participants, well, you may need to add that in for the next time you run the session. You may need to add that in because you noticed last time that was a thing, okay? Or maybe something completely unexpected happened. You're like, oh, need to add that in for next time as well. Okay. So something pretty random, like maybe people going out the wrong exits, or they're just maybe acting in a particular way during a particular time. If you want to make sure that your ground rules list is a dynamic list and you keep adding to it. I will tell you, one time when I was actually running a workshop, I actually had a gentleman that the phone rang, and this gentleman actually answered the phone while I was actually delivering the workshop, and he kept talking while I was talking, right? So from that moment onwards, I always create a ground rule that if somebody was going to answer the phone, if it was an emergency call, they took it outside, right? Now, I wouldn't have normally put it in that because I would have thought common sense, rules, politeness, you wouldn't normally do that. But no, this gentleman did that. So I included that as a future ground rule for every workshop I ever ran. Next one. Never, ever, ever, ever let your participants or audience members set the ground rules. Why would you do that? There was a little bit of fallacy, or a little bit of a tendency or a hype thing going around for a while where, okay, great new idea. Let's get our participants to actually set the ground rules and decide what are the expectations we're going to play to. Great idea in theory, but in practice, it never, ever, ever works because pretty much you've just handed the entire power dynamic over to your audience, and you are pretty much now at the mercy of whatever they say. So, highly recommend that you never, ever, ever let your audience members set them. All right. So, next one, ground rules. Highly recommend, as I said, you've got your stock standard list. And what I do recommend is you put it on a PowerPoint slide and you walk everyone through them. Or you have them written down and you read them out to people and you get them to write the ground rules down. It's critically important that they've got that absolutely clear in their notebooks, and that way you can allow them to have a record of it, and also it allows you to refer back to those ground rules later on if anything happens, right? And if you ever need to refer back and say, hey, earlier this week, we kind of wrote down those ground rules. At the moment, there's something going on. Are we all still committed to those ground rules? All right. So that's one simple technique that you can use to get people's behavior back online, so to speak. Next one. What I do highly recommend that you do is once people have written down those rules, as crazy as it might be, get everybody to stand up, pop them in pairs, and get them to read the ground rules to each other. Really funky, weird activity, but guess what? It gets everybody active, involved, and it becomes kind of a bit of a fun activity to do as you kick off your workshop because people are going, wow, this is a little bit different. And then what you can actually do is get people to sign at the bottom of the page to say they actually agree to those ground rules. Okay. So here are some random ones that I will always include. For example, phones on quiet. All right. Definitely a great one to include. Another one, where do you want phone calls taken if people are taking calls, right? Do you want them taking calls in the learning environment, even at break time? One of my ground rules is people never, ever have phone conversations in the learning environment. It must be outside. All right, next one, come back from breaks on time. You definitely want to set that ground rule or encourage that behavior. All right, next one person shares at a time. Really, really important. And next one, support others and show grace at all times. Show grace at all times. And that is really about creating a supportive, healthy, and respectful learning environment. All right. Really, really important one. And what I also like to do is say, excuse people's spelling because you don't want people being hyper active and hyper reactive around seeing typos in the learning environment. It's a really cool thing to just go, no, everybody spells a little bit different. The purpose of today's workshop is not to worry about spelling. All right. That could be one that you throw in there as well if you're not a fantastic speller yourself. Next one. What else have we got? Put answers into a sentence or set the expectations as to what you would want the written down answers to look like if you are running some assessments or you're running some activities or whatever it might be. But you must set those expectations. Do you want 1-word answers, 5-word answers, and a paragraph, whatever you want? All right. Next one, ask questions. All right. Great ground rule is set. But what you can do is you can certainly say, if you get stuck, definitely ask a question. If it is a question that may be more so related to your personal situation in regards to this topic, what I suggest is hold that question until break time and come up and see me. Right? It's a great ground rule to set because what it allows you to do is offer personalized coaching at the appropriate time. Okay. You definitely want to encourage people to ask questions. And you may even say, all right, today you will have multiple opportunities to ask questions and there will be allocated time for that. All right. So you can decide how you're going to roll out the question time, so to speak. So that's another thing you want to add to your ground rules. Next one, I do encourage people to always add in the ground rule of have fun. All right. Now it seems like a bit of a weird one, but when you add that ground rule in, it does allow that time, that space for people to have a little bit of a laugh, have some fun, but also know that it is going to be a bit of a serious and intentional workshop at the same time. Next one, I do love to also say if the group is small, I do like to say keep discussions focused. All right. Keep discussions focused. All right. And last of all, I will often encourage people to say, I allow myself to make mistakes and learn from others. All right. So you do want to create an environment where it is safe and secure and acceptable to make mistakes. All right. And you do want to encourage people to really allow themselves to jump into whatever you're teaching and know that it's safe to make mistakes. Okay. So just to recap, ground rules, you must set them. You've got to set the learning frames, so to speak, so that people know what good behavior looks like. You definitely want to have that magic word because for every single ground rule you set, you definitely never ever want to give the power over to the learners and say, you guys decide. Bad idea. Don't ever do that. And lastly, you definitely want to make sure that you keep adding to your ground rules, knowing that new environments may pose new expectations that you need to set. All right. So hopefully you got some value from this video. Know that any behavior that crops up is going to be representation of an expectation you either set or don't set. Now, if, for example, somebody ever breaks one of your ground rules, simple and easy tactic to really handle that is just simply saying, hey, Tim, Mary, are you okay? Are you okay? And simply having that respectful conversation, saying, Mary, are you okay? Because maybe Mary's having a hard time. Maybe Mary's dealing with some stuff outside the environment that you're not even aware of. And maybe Mary is coming late 2 or 3 times, and you're simply saying, Mary, are you okay? She says, blah, blah, blah. You're like, all right, cool. Mary, earlier this week or even this morning, we kind of set a ground rule around coming back from breaks on time. Do you think you'll be able to keep that ground rule? Or is it kind of a case where you need to go and deal with something and then come back so that you can be as present as possible? Okay. So that is a really respectful adult-like conversation structure that you can use to really keep everybody's behavior in line and aligned to your ultimate objectives, whatever they may be for your workshop. Hope you got some value out of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this message so that we really are equipping and empowering trainers throughout Australia and the globe with the knowledge that's really going to help them get the best results possible and their learners get the best results possible. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.